many governments around the world. And in Europe, a lot of this reporting is mediated through the European Commission. But if you go to the USA, to Australia, New Zealand, many of those countries have developed fiscal sustainability reports covering long time horizons, 40, 50, 60 years. We formed the view that financial reporting needs to include prospective information, but I've already mentioned the reservations that some people have. Accountants have been really not greatly involved in fiscal sustainability reporting. It's something which is generally done by economists and statisticians. So we formed a task force to develop proposals and to allow us to access some of this expertise. The information which is reported is very complex. It's also very voluminous. It comes in large reports with a large number of appendices. So the challenge is to present this information in a way which is understandable to the users of financial reports. The country which has probably the biggest challenge in terms of its public finances at the moment is the USA, probably closely followed by the United Kingdom. And in the USA, they have recently done quite a lot to present to users and to the citizens the very real fiscal challenges and scale of the public sector deficit. And now, if you go to the United States government's financial statements, you can see a statement of social insurance. And what that does is it gives a 75-year projection of the inflows and outflows for some of their most important social programs. And they principally include Social Security, the system whereby they pay pensions to their citizens over 62 years of age, and Medicare. And of course, because of the efforts of President Obama to get change in the whole approach to medical care in the US, we've heard quite a lot about Medicare over the last few weeks and months. And they're going to broaden that approach because the standard setter for the US federal government, FASAB, is going to require a broader statement which will show the fiscal position of all the programs of the US government over a 75-year horizon. Now, we think that mandating, requiring a financial statement may be quite premature. So what we're likely to suggest is that more and more governments and public sector entities should be discussing fiscal sustainability and the state of the public finances in their narrative reporting, and perhaps in 5, 10, 15 years they will be able to produce an additional statement. Say a little bit about IFRS convergence. It's been a big issue for us, and we have a target to try and develop a body of standards at the end of this year, which is based on IFRS at the end of last year. And the way we do this is to go through a procedure which tries to identify whether there are any public sector reasons to depart from IFRS. I mean, different people will have different views. I know, for instance, that Rosa has a different view from some of our members on some of our key projects, but that is how we have gone about this. Recently, we've issued quite a number of EDs. They cover some very important topics, financial instruments, and some less important topics, agriculture. And those exposure drafts are listed on this slide. We've also issued EDs on intangible assets and on entity combinations, what in the private sector they call business combinations. We've concluded a consultation on borrowing costs, which wasn't very satisfactory because we couldn't come to a firm conclusion. And we certainly have tried to strengthen our relationship with the International Accounting Standards Board. And now our members meet twice a year with certain members of the IASB. So that's just a brief overview of the sorts of things that we're doing. And I'll say a little bit about one of those topics, which is financial instruments. It's been quite complex and quite controversial because there is so much going on at the level of the IASB. As some of you may know, the IASB is reconsidering its approach to some of the key aspects of their very complex standard on the recognition and measurement of financial instruments. We are trying to monitor what they're doing, but we have decided that it is important that we have standards on financial instruments as part of our core suite. We've therefore made some minor adaptations to the standards of the private sector to deal with public sector issues. And they mostly deal with financial guarantee contracts, because in the public sector, financial guarantees are often given for no consideration or nominal consideration. Concessionary loans, again, where the public sector will provide entities and individuals with loans at concessionary rates. The big issue for financial guarantees has been, should we allow entities to use mathematical models where there isn't an active market? Because in many instances there will not be an active market for the sorts of huge guarantees that governments have recently given during the financial crisis. We came to the conclusion there that in many cases mathematical models will be too complex, or they will not actually give reliable outputs. But if an entity considers that such a mathematical model does give a reliable output, then we should not stop them from using that model. But we do understand that in a lot of cases that will not be possible. And lastly, we've introduced some minor additional disclosures for concessionary loans. And certainly next year we will be looking very closely at anything that the IASB issues in the last quarter of 2009 or in 2010 on subjects such as impairment and hedge accounting. And just to finish off with some brief words on the organisations with which we work. We've worked quite closely with the World Bank and other development banks, such as the Asian Development Bank, particularly on the cash basis. And the World Bank has been a major financial supporter of us. We're working with the IMF on some work looking at how governments are accounting for some of these massive fiscal interventions that we've seen. We've worked with the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development on fiscal sustainability and statistical convergence. We've worked with the International Accounting Standards Board and national standard setters on areas like the conceptual framework. We're aware that we need to translate our standards And